You're listening to the Touchdown Under podcast with Jack, Emilien, Anthony, and Ruth. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Touchdown Under podcast. I'm Jack, your host, and as always, I'm joined by Emilien.
Hey, mate, how's it going?
And no one else this week. Both Anthony and Ruth are absent. They've got some university exams that they are undertaking at the moment, and they will join us as soon as possible. But for this week, it is just me and you, Emilien.
Yes, it is.
So today it is episode 21 of the podcast, week 6, and we have just watched the Tennessee Titans defeat the Buffalo Bills on Tuesday Night Football, which we have not seen for a very long time, and not while I've been watching at least. So that was interesting. And we are pretty much recording right after the game, and it was quite a win by the Titans, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Going into this game, I think the Bills were definitely a very hot offense. They were definitely, one of the best in the league, in my opinion. But they got taken a step down today. The Titans defense definitely did show up. The Bills, Josh Allen didn't have a good performance. I'd say he had a good performance. Despite those 2 turnovers, he did manage to, get some nice throws going, get a bit of momentum, but he just wasn't able to get back into the game. And a big part of that is because of that Bills defense. I have been really surprised by how bad they've been compared to how they've been going the past 2 seasons. The Titans just controlled the clock that entire game. They dominated the second half completely. And I think the Bills defense was a big part of that.
Yeah, I agree. The Bills' defense was really undisciplined in terms of penalties throughout the game. And it seemed like Ryan Tannehill and that offense were really able to kind of carve them open, in the running game and passing game. Derrick Henry didn't have a huge game, but Ryan Tannehill was really good. He rushed for a touchdown. He threw 3 of his own. He looked really settled and comfortable, and, he really guided that offense to that win. As for Josh Allen, there are a couple of second half drives in the third quarter where he was mostly efficient, and the Bills looked like threatening the red zone at some points. But that one turnover, the interception to Malcolm Butler was really costly. I think that drive was one where they could have scored, and after they didn't, the return from Butler was a really good piece of play. And I think once they scored that touchdown off the back of the interception, it was going to be really hard for the Bills. And as you know, I did tip the Titans this week. I thought that they would have the upper hand on offense, and, Tannehill proved me right. I really liked his game, and he definitely outperformed Josh Allen today.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny you should mention that, because the Bills did have a shot at coming back into the game after Josh Allen scored that touchdown to TJ Yeldon. But I would say it's the defense that just that let the Titans drive all the way downfield pretty much, and the defense didn't give Josh Allen a chance to get back in the game, despite him throwing a touchdown after that terrible interception. That was just a bad throw, but he tried, but couldn't get it done.
That's right. And after that touchdown to Yeldon, they really couldn't get a stop on defense on that ensuing drive by the Titans, and they really needed to get a stop. They forced him to third down a couple of times on that drive, but they couldn't get it done on third down, which was quite a consistent issue throughout that game. Whereas the Titans defense was mostly able to contain Allen on third down. And I think that's where you see a difference in the 2 teams' performances today. Allen wasn't terrible, but it was mostly the defense that was, what costed the Bills. So we're going to kick off the podcast today with our general discussion, and there are a lot of topics, as usual, that came out of this week's games. Now, probably the most significant news out of the weekend was Dak Prescott's horrific ankle injury, which he suffered in the Cowboys' win against the Giants. Dak is confirmed to be out for the season, and so Andy Dalton, who is probably what we consider one of the best backups in the league, you'd have to say, will now step in at quarterback for the Cowboys. How do you think Dalton will fare in that Cowboys offense?
I think he'll do pretty well, and the reason I say that is because of the receiving core. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is an outstanding rookie. I'd say probably the best rookie wide receiver right now. Then you've got, obviously, Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, who have been performing really well. The one thing I will say, though, it's unfortunate for Dom that he's not having last year's Cowboys offensive line, because this year they've been quite underwhelming, I'd say. But it's good to see him. It'll be good to see him in offense where he has weapons everywhere, as opposed to in Cincinnati where he didn't really have a shot. Same problem, though. He doesn't have a defense, and that's going to be tough for him.
Yeah, that's right. And just on that point about the Cowboys' offensive line, they have suffered some injuries on that offensive line. Tyron Smith, the tackle, has been out. Joe Looney, the center, has also been out with a knee. And so you have to wonder whether that factors in as the season goes on for Dalton as he tries to avoid pressure. But you're right, there's obviously a lot of weapons at his disposal. He should be able to lean on the running game, most weeks. And, you've got three really dependable guys in Cooper, Lamb, and Michael Gallup. And we've seen the breakout of Cedric Wilson, a little known guy, but now he's been kind of the fourth dependable guy in terms of that wide receiver group. And that's exactly what, Dalton needs, because he's got a lot of options there now. So apart from Prescott's injury over the weekend, some other news stories were Alex Smith's historical return from what we originally thought was probably a career-ending knee injury, but he has been able to come back. He wasn't meant to come back. Dwayne Haskins was benched, as we know, in favor of Kyle Allen, but Allen was injured during their game against the Rams. And so Smith came in and, obviously nothing special. He didn't do a whole lot. He got sacked a number of times, which was quite, nerve-wracking, especially for his family and Washington fans. So, but yeah, how good was it to see him back on the field?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, back to your point about how he got sacked a lot of times. I think everyone watching that game was just hoping that nothing bad happened every time he was hit. Like, I remember the first time he got sacked by Aaron Donald, I was like, please no, please no. But good to see he's all right. He looked decent, and it's worth noting that Ron Rivera decided to keep him in despite Kyle Allen being fit to return. So it was a coaching decision. Ron Rivera trusted Alex Smith more, and it's not easy coming back. You play your first NFL game in over 2 years, pretty much, and you face Aaron Donald and that Rams front seven. So it's really tough, and I'm excited to see him back on the field next week. I believe. Who do they play? They play the New York Giants. So it's not a very formidable defense. So I definitely think he'll get more opportunities to show that he's ready to be back in the NFL and ready to start for the Washington football team.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. I'm not sure if Rivera has confirmed who's starting, but it will be interesting to see whether he goes back to Allen if he's healthy or stays with Alex Smith.
Well, I think the fact that he kept Alex Smith in the game despite Kyle Allen being healthy to return, I think Alex Smith will definitely get the start, I reckon.
Yeah, we'll see. But it was definitely good to see him back on the field, and hopefully he can build on, his return in future weeks. Russell Wilson he was the guy that we were all talking about as, the leading MVP candidate through the first, 4 weeks of the season. And the Seahawks obviously won against the Vikings this week, but not without, quite a scare. They were down big early on, and they had to really kind of battle back. And Wilson wasn't great for a lot of that game, but he really stepped up when it mattered, and it really shows the kind of quarterback he is. So is Wilson still an MVP, or is he still the leading MVP candidate in your mind, or has Sunday's performance changed your mind somewhat?
Well, I think he is, and the sole reason for that is that final drive. You drive 96 yards downfield, and you score a touchdown with the game on the line. That is exactly what an MVP should do. That pretty much made his case and kept him in front because, as you said, his performance up to that point was very average by his standards, especially in the first half. That was woeful. The Vikings defense, all credit to them, they were playing really good with a true safety deep zone look. So they neutralized the deep ball, and Russell Wilson got sacked a ton of times. They neutralized the run game as well. So very good Vikings defense. That being said, Russell Wilson, second half, as soon as Dalvin Cook got injured, the Seahawks just had a massive surge, and that's all Russell Wilson needs, a bit of momentum, and then that final game-winning drive. I think he is the MVP candidate. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's a good point you make about utilizing the deep ball because obviously, as you've come to know with Wilson, Seahawks offense, he loves to throw it deep, and he is probably the best deep ball in the game. So, to see it neutralized by Vikings defenses that has been decimated by other teams so far was quite interesting to see and quite unexpected, obviously. But as you talked about on a final drive, Wilson obviously, he didn't, make it super easy on himself. He left his two biggest throws to fourth downs, was a 4th and 10 in their own territory, and then, the 4th down and goal. So, Seahawks fans, they definitely had their hearts in their mouths, and so hopefully Wilson will be able to, start better in the future, but I don't think it really dampens his MVP candidacy at all. I still think he's the number one guy. I know you like Josh Allen as a sneaky MVP candidate, but I think today's performance kind of put him back a bit. It was a bit of a reality check. And my MVP pick at the start of the season, Kyler Murray, has been pretty mediocre these past couple of weeks. Yeah. He had an all right performance against the Jets, but yeah, I still think come the end of the season, it'll be between, I reckon, Wilson, probably Mahomes, and maybe Allen, depending on how he plays for the rest of the season.
So you left out Rodgers on that list. Where do you think he stands? I think you may have forgotten him, but where do you think he stands between the top 4 that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I forgot Rodgers. I feel like Rodgers is above Allen or ahead of Allen in terms of the MVP race. We didn't see him this week because they're on a bye, but I feel like, as I said, Josh Allen's performance today did put him back a little bit, and I think Rodgers and Mahomes and Wilson will be those main 3 candidates going into the end of the season. I didn't think Allen was going to be able to keep up, his good play, sustainably. And today's performance was probably an indicator of that. And I don't think he will fare too well against the Chiefs next week either. So, yeah, I still think Wilson's number 1, but I think Mahomes and Rodgers will be his main competitors for that award.
Yeah, just talking about next week's game against the Chiefs, do you reckon if Josh Allen matches Mahomes, not necessarily take the win, but if similar stat lines, similar play style, deep balls, throwing on the run, all that sort of stuff, do you reckon if Josh Allen matches Mahomes, he could legitimately be in that MVP race for the following few weeks? Not necessarily for the end of the season, but for the following few weeks.
I think he's going to have to lead into a win to be able to to be able to convince me to say that he is really among those top candidates for the award. I don't think simply playing okay in Kansas City is enough because the defense in Kansas City is good, but it is able to be exploited. And if he isn't able to exploit that defense on a secondary, I can't say that he's in that really top group. I think they've got to come away with a win for me to be able to say that he is truly an MVP candidate.
Fair enough.
So another topic this week that came out of this week was, obviously the Chiefs suffered a pretty shock loss at the hands of the Raiders at home. And so the question becomes, are the Chiefs still the kings of the AFC? Because they are 4-1 now after their loss. And you've got teams like the Steelers and Titans in the AFC who are now both still perfect in the season. So do you think, Emilien, that the Chiefs are still the number 1 team in the AFC?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say I'm really happy for the Raiders. First time beating Mahomes in Arrowhead, especially. That's a very big accomplishment. So happy for them. With the Chiefs, I do think they're the kings of the AFC, and the big reason for that is they did beat the Ravens in Baltimore. And I think that if the Chiefs were to match up against the Steelers or the Titans, I do think they'd get the win there. I do. So they are still the team to beat, but I don't think this one performance shouldn't take away from the Raiders and what they've been able to accomplish this season so far. But the Chiefs are still the team to beat, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you reckon?
That's true. I agree. Obviously, like I always say, you can't overreact to one loss in the NFL. There are a lot of aberration games that occur over the course of, even just a week. So I'm not saying that, we shouldn't take away from the Raiders, but I feel like if you play that game again, that, the Chiefs win fairly comfortably. This was definitely a shock result. And I think it's a loss the Chiefs kind of needed to have, just to kind of reiterate the fact that, they're not unbeatable. They've got to, take each and every opponent as seriously as the last. And so I still think they're the Kings. But I feel like if you played the Chiefs against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, they might struggle against their defense. So I'm not too sure. Those two teams, I think, are probably the best two AFC teams at the moment. Yeah, but I think come the business end of the season, I'm still riding with the Chiefs in the AFC. So our final little discussion point for heading into week 6 this episode is the shock release of running back Le'Veon Bell by the New York Jets. It literally occurred midway through today's game from Adam Schefter. And I mean, obviously I can't be the only one who's shocked, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't understand it. I know Bell hasn't been very productive with the Jets, but I think that's more the coaching and the scheme altogether rather than on Bell. Bell's a really good running back. He was one of the best running backs in the league when he was with the Steelers, like right up to that final season with them. And then you go from that to what he's been doing at the Jets. It's not him. And I think that with the right opportunity, I think there are some very suitable teams for him to land. I think Chicago is definitely a front runner, and I definitely think he'd be able to utilize his talents there really well, given that Tariq Cohen's out. But I don't understand it. I think the Jets, they're kind of lost in terms of management, in terms of the roster, in terms of how they're playing. They're just lost.
Fucking birds chirping, mate. Shut up. Yeah, I agree. I feel like the Bears are definitely a possible destination for him. You know, as you mentioned, Cohen is out, but I feel like a backfield consisting of David Montgomery and Le'Veon Bell has the potential to be pretty lethal, especially with how the offensive line has been playing so far. They also have Lamar Miller on their practice squad right now, so it does have the potential to be really a really enticing, prospect, him going there. I think other teams, I think the Cardinals are a really interesting landing spot as well. Kenyon Drake has been largely disappointing so far for the Cardinals, and I feel like you couldn't just ride with Chase Edmonds. So I feel like if you paired, a speed guy like Chase Edmonds with Le'Veon Bell in the backfield, it could be pretty lethal. But yeah, I think the Bears and Cardinals are probably the two main destinations, I'd say. The Bears definitely do have the cap space to sign someone like Bell, maybe on a short-term deal, but I think that would be a really nice signing for Nagy and that offense. So that wraps up our general discussion for week 6, heading into week 6. Now we're going to move on to our power rankings, which is our first segment as usual. And starting off at 32 are the New York Jets. 31 is the Jaguars. The Giants are at 30. Washington is at 29. The Bengals are at 28. The Falcons at 27. 26 is the Lions. The Broncos are at 25. And the Miami Dolphins come in at 24. Now, they won emphatically in San Francisco against the 49ers, and it was a really impressive win on both sides of the ball. They were able to pressure and force turnovers out of Jimmy Garoppolo, as well as generate offense at the hands of, Ryan Fitzpatrick and some of those guys. So, and then Dolphins, really promising signs, and, these are still without Tua at quarterback. So, obviously, Fitzpatrick is playing good football, but I feel like these are really promising signs because once you put Tua in there, he's obviously eventually going to be a better option than Fitzpatrick. And so I feel like, at least that offense has the potential to be pretty special once Tua finally comes in and plays quarterback.
Yeah, it's funny talking about the Dolphins. A lot of people, are saying they're a bad team or they're trash or whatever. You consider the 3 losses they have. They've been to the Patriots in Foxborough. They're taking on the Bills and then the Seahawks as well. So they're definitely not easy teams to beat. And the teams they have beaten, the Dolphins, they've destroyed them. They beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville on Thursday Night Football. They completely decimated them. And just now they've destroyed the 49ers. So I think this Dolphins team is very underrated. As you say, if once Tua gets in, which I think will happen in the next 4 weeks, I'd say within the next month, I think he'll get the start. But if he is lives up to his expectations, I think if he lives up to his expectations as a rookie quarterback, starting from the Dolphins, this Dolphins team definitely has potential to go far and has a pretty bright future.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like as long as Fitzpatrick is playing the way that he is in his offense, Tua might have to wait a little bit. But yeah, as I said, things are looking pretty bright for the Dolphins right now. The defense has been, pretty good as well. They've got two really nice corners in Howard and Jones, and they just look really stable, which is something we haven't seen from this team in a few years. And so to see them playing like this is really good. They've beaten, you think about a team who's rising, right? You want them to beat the teams that they could beat. And, the Jaguars were one of those teams, and they handled them, really easily. They handled the 49ers with ease. And like you said, they've played some pretty tough teams. Like, I'm not going to fault them for losing to the Patriots in Foxborough. I'm not going to fault them for losing to the Bills or the Seahawks either. So they're going to have some winnable games coming up, as they have a pretty easy schedule. So I would expect to see them win a few more games as well. And if not, I think that's when you might see Tua. But the way they're going now, I can't see Tua coming in anytime soon.
Yeah, fair enough.
At 23, we have the Carolina Panthers, and obviously neither of us or the other boys had the Panthers as, a playoff-worthy kind of team in the NFC this season. But so far, at least, they've kind of proved us wrong. They've now, I think, have they won 3 games in a row or 2?
Yep. Three in a row.
They've beaten some pretty decent teams. They beat the Chargers in Los Angeles, and then they beat the Cardinals at home, and now they've just beaten the Falcons in Atlanta. All 3 of which are games I would have expected them to lose, but they have really come out and shown that they are definitely, worthy of at least making a run at the playoffs this season. They are tied first for the NFC South, and Teddy Bridgewater has looked really steady, and he's really liked running Joe Brady's offense in Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the inclusion of Mike Davis and how he's been able to get the run game going despite McCaffrey being out. It'll be interesting to see how the Panthers operate with McCaffrey back in. I think he's back in, I don't know how long, so I wouldn't know. But once he's back in, it's going to be interesting to see how much they rely on him. Or do they stick with the same sort of scheme and game plan that they have been with the past 3 weeks that's found this success?
Yeah, it's a good point about Mark Davis. With McCaffrey, it sounds like they're preparing to activate him off injured reserve. I'm not sure if he returns this week against the Bears. It might be a safer bet if he returns the week after. But I feel like once he does return, Davis will probably be more of that third down receiving back kind of thing, which he's really played pretty well in that role. And, he's also played really well as a lead back. And quite frankly, he's been putting up McCaffrey-like numbers, which is quite ironic in his absence. And that offense has been running really smoothly. And they're coming up against, a Bears team this week upcoming who has struggled somewhat against the run with the absence of Eddie Goldman, who opted out at the start of the season. So there's another opportunity for them to kind of take advantage and try and get another win on the board. Now, at number 22, we have the Chargers. At 21, the Vikings. The Eagles come in at 20. The Cowboys are at 19. The Texans are at 18. And the 49ers have dropped significantly. They are down to 17 on our rankings after that big loss at home to Miami. The 49ers have, I believe it's a league-leading 13 players on injured reserve right now. But their play as a whole has been quite disappointing. That really strong defense we saw last season just allowed 43 points at home to the Dolphins, while Jimmy Garoppolo looked really unsettled coming back, and he was eventually benched, but they're going to say that, it was because of his injury, but he doesn't look good either. And what do you think, about the 49ers right now?
Yeah, we talked in the preseason about Jimmy Garoppolo and whether or not he can really lead this team and step up and be a reliable quarterback. And, obviously, I don't want to pin him down too much because of that one game. We'll see how he goes in the next few weeks, but it's not promising. And if the team's having quarterback troubles, the most important position in the game, if you're having troubles at quarterback, you don't know who to start or none of your quarterbacks are playing well, that's where the troubles are going to be, and that's where the team's success is going to falter. So I don't think they can rely too much on Raheem Mostert and the run game. They definitely need pass game to go because I think the run game worked so well last year because the defense was so good. When you don't have an elite defense making stops, making plays, and holding teams to less than 20 points, your run game can't carry the offense for you. So the quarterback, whoever it may be, whether it be CJ Beathard or Jimmy Garoppolo, they need to step up. And I don't see it happening soon. I think maybe in a month's time we could see more stable quarterback play. But right now it's not looking good.
Yeah, that's right. Quarterback does look like it's going to be a bit of an issue, but with those guys that they have injured at the moment, I think it's going to be really hard for them to even make the playoffs this season, which is not something I would be expected to be saying at the start of the season. They are they're 2-3 in the season right now, the 49ers, and they've got a really tough schedule upcoming. They've got the Rams, Patriots, Seahawks, Packers, and Saints in their next 5 games. So they've got a hellish run coming up, and I'm really not sure if they can even get 2 wins out of those next 5. And I just think if they keep losing, and I see them losing in these upcoming games, right? If they keep losing, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because those teams you mentioned, 4 of the 5 are NFC teams, and they're all playoff contenders. So if the 49ers can't beat 2 of them, I don't think there's any chance that they'll make the playoffs because those NFC teams will have the tiebreak over them, and they'll have better NFC records, and it's just gonna be borderline impossible for the 49ers to come back because you've got so many good teams in the NFC right now. You've got the Packers and the Bears in the NFC North. Then you've got the Panthers, Bucks, and Saints in the NFC South. And obviously the Seahawks, Rams, and potentially the Cardinals. There's just so much competition. 49ers can't afford to lose many of these games, and I think they will, though.
That's right. Now, at 16, we have the Cardinals and the Rams at 15, who we just talked about. At 14, we have the Bears, who moved up after their big win against the Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football. The Bears were pretty poor offensively for a fair portion of that first half and for a decent portion of the second half as well. But they were able to come up in big moments. Foles made a handful of really nice throws. He was probably the offense didn't really help him much, but he really wasn't that great for. Most of his passes were a little bit off or a little bit short, but there were that handful in the big moments that really counted, and they were what won them the game in the end. He led that game-winning drive to set up the field goal for Cairo Santos, and the defense also made some nice plays, including forcing the Bucks to punt, so that Foles could lead that game-winning drive. Plus, Kyle Fuller made that one really nice play where he forced a fumble, and the Bears took over and scored a touchdown. So both sides of the ball for the Bears made big plays when it counted. It was not a superb game as a whole for that team overall, but they made those plays, and that's what won the game, and they were able to keep that Brady-led Buccaneers offense to just 19 points.
Yeah, I think you're underselling it a bit. I think that defense was very reminiscent of 2018 Bears. I was very impressed with how well that defense contained Tampa's offense. They shut them down pretty much after. Because at the start of the game, right, the Bucks had 13-point lead, I think, something like that. And it looked like the Bucks were having it too easy. But that Bears defense stepped up. They allowed the offense to get back into it. As you said, Nick Foles didn't play amazing, but he made plays when it counts, and that's what matters most. So honestly, I'm very impressed with the Bears win here. I hope they can maybe carry that momentum going into the next few weeks. They got the Panthers in Carolina. I think that's a very winnable game. They should win it. And yeah, I think the defense honestly really impressed me, and I'm very happy for them to get back to a very high level.
Yeah, they've got the Panthers next week, and then the Rams. So there are a couple of, I think those games are more tough than people expect. I feel like the Panthers do have the potential to trouble them, at least offensively. But we'll see. They should be 5-1 this time next week. But I believe there's every chance that they could slip up against the Panthers. But we'll see. It was a good win, and they're 4-1 now, and they look well placed to make a run at the playoffs. if not the NFC North title, then one of the a few wildcard spots this season. At number 13, we have the Raiders, and we really briefly talked about their really nice win against the Chiefs in Kansas City. I didn't watch a whole lot of that game, but I did see little bits and pieces, and Derek Carr looked really good. They dropped 40 in Kansas City. Josh Jacobs looked good as well. Their offense just looked really nice, and it's a kind of win that the Raiders fans have been wanting to see for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. The last 2 weeks, they took a loss in New England. They took a loss against Buffalo. And their biggest problem in those games were fumbles. They lost quite a few fumbles, and it honestly derails all the momentum of the offense. So we talked about whether or not the Saints game was an anomaly or not, and it looks like it wasn't. I think the Raiders' offense is definitely very capable. Their defense played really well against the Chiefs. I'm surprised by how well they handled Mahomes in the second half. Because early on it looked like Mahomes was just going to do his thing. He bombed it deep to Tyreek for a touchdown. It got held back. It got called back. But I definitely thought at that point, it's like, oh, yeah, classic Raiders Chiefs. Mahomes going to expose the Raiders secondary, going to throw deep, all that. But they adjusted really well. And I think that they have a legitimate shot at a wildcard spot now. I think there is a lot of competition in the AFC West. Sorry, not the AFC West, just the AFC in general. But the Raiders are definitely a team that can get some momentum. They needed this win badly, and they got it. So looking forward to seeing how they can build off it.
Yeah, it's a good point you make about how we were discussing whether it was an anomaly win against the Saints. You guys also asked me whether I thought the loss against the Patriots was a sign that maybe they weren't up to it this season. And I remember saying that we have to acknowledge their good play. Not many teams come into Foxborough and win, even without a Brady now. So it shows really good resilience for them to, kind of bounce back from those kinds of losses and then go and, beat the reigning Super Bowl champs. So, yeah, I agree. They do definitely have a shot to make a push for a wild card spot. Obviously, they won't be winning the AFC West, but, there is, I think, a chance that they could win some games late in the season and make a push on those wild card spots. Now, on to number 12, we have the Colts. At 11, the Patriots. And at 10, the Browns, who moved into the top 10 for the first time this season. And they came off a really nice win against the Indianapolis Colts, who were, one of the form teams, of the league recently. We know how good the Colts run D is. And the Browns were able to not only get some production on the ground with Kareem Hunt, but Baker Mayfield was also able to air it out. They scored 32 points against that defense, which was really quite impressive considering they held the Bears to 11 points just last week. And I think really shows just how much the Browns offense is gelling and just how much, the right head coach and leader of a team makes a difference for a guy like Baker Mayfield on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was most surprised by the matchup I think most people were looking forward to was the Browns offense versus the Colts defense. But this game turned out to be a lot more defensive than I thought. A lot of interceptions, one pick six from the Browns, which was very good. Philip Rivers, not a good read there, but the Browns able to get momentum off that. And I think it really shows that the Browns are a very well-rounded team. They're not just an offensive powerhouse, as the game against the Cowboys might have suggested. But their defense really stepped up this game when it needed to, made plays on Philip Rivers. And I'm really surprised. And I think it's awesome to see how competitive they are this season. It's the first time they're 4-1 in 26 years, I think. And the AFC North, I'm looking forward to all these division games now because all three, the Steelers, Ravens, and Browns, all have a lot of momentum right now. And I'm really looking forward to these division games. Starting next week, we've got the Browns and Steelers. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, that's right, Emilien. I was just going to bring up that point as well. You've got 3 4-win teams in the AFC North right now. And so it makes this win that much more important that the Browns are able to keep pace with the Steelers and Ravens by winning that game. And you're right, these division games are going to be, crucial in terms of determining the standings of the division and for the AFC because you have to think those 3 teams will be in the playoffs. And, you could even make the case now that the AFC North is, one of, if not the best division in football in terms of the current play of those teams. So it's going to be interesting to see for sure, and I hope the Browns can continue this good run of form. At number 9 with the Bills and at 8 the Titans, and we just talked about that game earlier on. The Bills moved down and the Titans go up after the Titans' victory. I don't think there's much more to say about this win, but like I mentioned a bit earlier, I'm just really impressed by the Titans and how they're able to manage and contain Josh Allen and that Bills offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I know going into this season, I projected the Titans to regress, miss the playoffs. I expected them to rely too much on Derrick Henry, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. Ryan Tannehill has been incredible. Their passing game has been great, and now that AJ Brown's back, it's honestly a very scary offense to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mike Vrabel has really, encouraged the kind of play action game for the Titans. Tannehill has been really productive and efficient out of play action because obviously there's always a threat of Henry on the ground, and the play action really opens everything up for Tannehill. And given time to pass given time to throw the ball in the pocket, he can be pretty lethal. And he didn't get that opportunity much in Miami, and now they've got a steady offensive line in Tennessee, and he's really taken advantage. Number 7 of the Steelers. At 6, the Saints. The Buccaneers are at 5. The Packers are at 4. And the Chiefs drop down from 1st to 3rd after their loss against the Raiders. We talked about this game against the Raiders, their loss, and we also talked about how we still think they're the kings of the AFC. But for now, they do drop down to number 3 as the Seahawks and Ravens move up one spot. And the Ravens are now our top team in our power rankings. That wraps up our power rankings for this episode heading into week 6. We're going to move on to Anthony's Q&A. And since Anthony isn't here, Emilien, you are going to answer the questions for him this week.
Yep.
And the first question comes from Bolstered Up Sports, who asks, who has the brighter future, the Panthers or the Dolphins?
Yeah, I looked at this question based on quarterback mainly. I'm going to say the Dolphins because they have a really good foundation right now. They've got a solid team all around. They've got a veteran quarterback right now playing and a really promising rookie, very explosive talent, really good prospect, learning from him. So he's sitting on the sideline. I think it's very smart for him to not be thrown into the action. I honestly, if it were up to me, hopefully, I hope that he doesn't play much this year at all. I would much rather he learn from the bench, all that. Obviously, the Panthers have McCaffrey and they're building their entire team around him. But I think right now there's just too much to build. They obviously they're playing well. I'm not saying that they're a bad team. They're playing well. I just think from a roster point of view, they definitely need to do more. And that starts with quarterback play. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is the best long-term solution. So, yeah, I think Dolphins have the brighter future at the moment. But the Panthers, that's not to say the Panthers don't have a bright future. I think they have a very bright future. I think the Dolphins is just better right now.
Fair enough. Our second question comes from Tom, who asks, did Mike Zimmer make the right decision in going for it on 4th and inches in the last quarter against the Seahawks?
Absolutely. I definitely think it was the right call to go for it. The play call itself was the problem. They ran it straight to Bobby Wagner, and I don't know why you would do that. They were so good that game just running it outside the box, right? Just stretch plays or toss plays, whatever. Just giving the running back more space to work with. And on 4th and inches, you run it straight through the middle, which I kind of get, but right to one of the best tacklers in the league and arguably the best middle linebacker. Obviously, the Seahawks defense wasn't great, but they've shown that they can definitely make a play when it matters most, as we saw against Cam Newton and the Patriots a few weeks ago. So the call to go for it was right, because I think if they go for it, if they take the 3, they're up 8. Russell Wilson, I still think, makes a game-winning drive, and I think if the game is on the line, he makes the 2-point conversion. I think he's too good to miss that from the 2-yard line. So, yeah, the decision was right. The play call wasn't. That's what I'm going to go with.
So I disagree here, Emilien, because I feel like if you're the Vikings and, it's wet and Wilson has not been playing as he usually has, and you've got a chance to make it an 8-point game and force Wilson to go all the way down the field, score a touchdown and 2-point in the rain after, he hasn't been playing that well, I think you've got to play for that scenario and, if not, get the ball back at the very end for a chance to win it late, at least go to overtime. I don't think you can risk it like that. yeah, you're talking about it. You know the Silks are going to stack the box if you're going to go for a 4th and 1. The player call obviously didn't help things, but I just don't think it was the right choice. Like, you kick the easy 3, and you play good D. You know, we saw Russell Wilson had to make an amazing throw on 4th down anyway. And the Vikings defense forced him into 4th down twice on that drive. You know, in an alternate universe, I feel like there's a chance they're going to stop against Russell Wilson. You know, in the rain, he wasn't playing that well. As I said, I think the reason they went for it is because, you know, there was no crowd, and, you know, obviously Cousins was able to communicate better at the line with his offensive line.
Yeah.
But I still don't think it was the right call, and I think this loss does have to go on Zimmer.
Fair enough.
The third and final question for Anthony's Q&A this week comes from Atlanta Falcons Australia, who asks, who should the Falcons hire as a new head coach? Should they aim to invest in a new quarterback to sit behind Matt Ryan for a year?
Yeah. Well, I hate the word tanking, but I do think the Falcons are set to be one of the worst teams this season. After they're 0-5 now, and it's not what you want. Regarding the head coach spot, obviously this year, I don't think any notable head coach is going to be signed. I don't think it's possible. But next year, I definitely do think they should go for Eric Bieniemy. I think the Falcons' offense is quite similar to the Chiefs in that they've got a lot of weapons. It's very explosive. And I definitely think that Eric Bieniemy would be a very good fit for the Falcons. I think that his play calling is really good. We've seen how he's done it with the Chiefs and all that. So, yeah, Dan Quinn being a defensive head coach, I don't think works too well for the Falcons, especially now that their defense is the worst in the league, I'd say. So, yeah, Eric Bieniemy, I think, would be a good fit for head coach next season. Regarding getting a quarterback to replace Matt Ryan in the future, I definitely think that it's a valid option. That being said, I don't think they need one of the best quarterback prospects in Trevor Lawrence to get that. I think they can go with a good quarterback, a good prospect, but I don't think they need like a top 10 pick or to waste on a quarterback. I think they've got other more important positions to fill, especially on the defense. They definitely need to fix that, and potentially running back, depending on how Gurley goes in the next few years. I think he's improving, but the Falcons' priority right now isn't quarterback. It's more on the defense, and yeah, I think that's the problem there.
Yeah, I agree with your point about hiring Eric Bieniemy. I think he's the right choice. I think you've got to have an offensive guy there with all the offensive weapons they've got in Atlanta with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, and of course Matt Ryan. I still think Matt Ryan is a really good quarterback. I don't think there's a need to go after a young quarterback. Like, if you're Atlanta, I think you've got a top 10 quarterback in the league. Like, Matt Ryan, I think he's still a really good quarterback. He just needs the right guy calling the plays, and they've done really. For the most part, they've done really well on offense this season. Like, it's been the defense that's let them down in key situations, and I think that's where they need to invest in draft stock. It's in the defense. I don't think the offense needs much help at all, really. I think a better defense is going to really stabilize that team as a whole. But yeah, I do agree that Bieniemy should be their number one coaching target.
Yeah.
That's Anthony's Q&A. Without Anthony this week, we're going to move on to Multi-Madness, our next segment. And we won again last week, Multi-Madness. We have now got 2 wins on the year. We had 2 and 3 for our multis, which is, I think it's a pretty decent win rate. And this week, we have got 5 more legs in our multi, and the first of which is the Ravens to beat the Eagles in Philadelphia. I think it's a fairly risky one. Honestly, I just got a feeling that the Eagles may just come in and win. They really took it up to the Steelers last week in Pittsburgh, and I feel like they're really not going to want to go and lose another game. Like, they've got to keep pace with the Cowboys, even though their future season is pretty sketchy with Dalton. But I think this is a game that the Eagles could potentially surprise us and win. But obviously, if I'm tipping a team, it's going to be the Fat Ravens. They should be able to handle the Eagles, but I'm prepared for an upset. Our second leg is the Vikings to beat the Falcons in Minnesota. I think the Vikings have played pretty well the last couple of weeks. They were reasonably unfortunate against the Seahawks. They probably deserved to win the game there. And a week before, they beat the Texans. They looked right. Listen, the Vikings are probably one of the best 1-4 teams we've seen in the last decade, honestly. The defense has started playing well. The offense is not terrible. But, key situations have kind of let them down this season so far. So I think the Falcons should be a pretty easy win for them at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Vikings are definitely going to want to bounce back from that tough loss because they were the better team that game. Like throughout the 4 quarters, I definitely think they were the better team. And if Dalvin Cook didn't get injured, who knows what would happen. I definitely think that the Vikings would have won the game. I think it was really, really unfortunate that Dalvin Cook got injured at the start of the second half. But yeah, they'll definitely want to bounce back. And the Falcons just firing Dan Quinn, I think they're going to be a little lost, honestly, for the next few weeks. And obviously, being 0-5 isn't a good sign. I don't see them winning this game in Minnesota. I just think the Vikings are the better team overall. Their defense has definitely played a lot better than it has been the past few weeks against Seattle. So very, very intrigued to see how they'll perform after that tough loss.
Our third leg is the Colts to beat the Bengals at home in Indianapolis. And I feel like the Colts, this is kind of like the perfect kind of bounce back game kind of win scenario for the Colts. I feel like they will be able to handle the Bengals at home if they shut down Joe Mixon in that running game and force Burrow to throw and maybe get some pressure in his face. I feel like they should be able to get the win pretty easily. I'm banking on a kind of a bounce back performance from not only that defense, but also from Phillip Rivers, because he was, as we talked about, pretty poor against Cleveland last week. So, yeah, I think a Colts win is pretty dependable.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with everything you said.
Our second last leg is the Buccaneers to beat the Packers. Now, this is probably our one kind of more 50-50 pick this week. The Buccaneers are at home in Tampa Bay, but the Packers have looked like, one of the best, if not the best, NFC team this year so far, and the Bucs are coming off a loss. And I think that's also a reason why they could win. They're going to want to bounce back. Brady's going to want to bounce back because last week was probably Brady's worst performance of the year so far. And so, he's going to want to step up in prime time against, a really good NFC opponent. And I feel like they get the job done at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I do think the Packers are the better team right now, but I think that the Buccaneers just match up too well against them. The Packers right now, I think their offense they haven't played a really good defense yet. And they're going to get that with the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers, since they have, the best run defense in the league, Aaron Jones might struggle a bit. And then that's going to put more pressure on Rodgers to play well. That secondary is no joke either from the Bucs. Antoine Winfield is definitely a really good rookie. I'd say probably leading front runner for defensive rookie of the year right now. So on paper, the Buccaneers match up better, and that's why I think they'll win this game, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. Our last pick this week for our multi is the Rams to beat the 49ers in Santa Clara. Now, as we talked about, the 49ers have a really tough schedule coming up, and the Rams have looked pretty good so far this year at 4-1, and I feel like their offense will be too hot to handle for the 49ers decimated defense this week, while, Aaron Donald in that front seven should be able to kind of put pressure on whoever's at quarterback for the 49ers, whether it be Beathard or Garoppolo.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can't see the Rams losing this. I know they came close to beating the 49ers last year in a really close game at Levi Stadium, or was it at? No, I'm not sure. I think it was in Los Angeles. Either way, I can't see the Rams losing this one. They've got too much momentum going in right now, and the 49ers just have too many issues to deal with Aaron Donald. I think Aaron Donald's going to absolutely decimate whoever's that quarterback. I think the pressure's going to be too much for them. They won't be able to come back from an early deficit, which I predict will happen. Yeah,
they may also have trouble, executing that outside zone running scheme that I love in San Francisco. Obviously, with Aaron Donald up front causing havoc. So it'll be interesting to see. As you said, I can't see the Rams losing. I feel like their offense does have a big night in at Levi's. They are our 5 legs for our multi this week. It wraps up our multi-matter segment, and we're going to move on to Emilien's team to watch. Take it away.
Alrighty. So last week I had the Colts as my team to watch. As I said, I was looking forward to the Colts defense and how they'll handle the Browns offense. And they did pretty well. I think, as I said before, it was a defensive battle. So the Colts defense didn't play too bad. It was their offense that just got Philip Rivers with that pick six, throwing more picks. I think that the offense needs to get stuff together because, as far as I'm concerned, the defense did its job. Held the Browns offense to 25 points, which is a very manageable win for the Colts. So disappointed with the Colts offense, happy with their defense performance though. This week, my team to watch is the Minnesota Vikings. I think that they're definitely coming off a tough loss, as I said before. They played a great game. It's fine. I think that the Seahawks aren't an easy team to beat, so they shouldn't be too disappointed at performance. They should be proud of that. Their two safety zone deep looked really good. And as to I like to go for it. Blah 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 blah. On to this week against the Falcons. This is a game they should win. And I can't see them losing. They're at home. The big question is, can they inject some momentum into their season? Because they're 1-4 right now, and they definitely, over the past few weeks, they haven't played like a 1-4 team. I think they definitely deserve to be more of that 2-2, 2-2 or 2-3, 3-2 sort of look. So they're my team to watch this week. Looking forward to see how they play and how they rebound against the Falcons.
I'm looking forward to it as well, Emilien. That wraps up Emilien's team to watch for this week. On to our second last segment for this week's episode, and we have TDU's Game of the Week. And this week, we have chosen the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Green Bay Packers in primetime as our Game of the Week. And I'm going to go over the who I think has a better offense and more momentum going into the game. And Emilien is going to go over who he thinks has the better defense and who is better coached. And I think the Packers have the better offense at the moment. They have looked like one of the most efficient offenses in the league. Both the running and passing game has been elite so far. As I mentioned in a very early episode, I think Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones is the best quarterback running back duo in the league right now. And they've really shown it. They've been dominant so far. And I think, obviously you mentioned that the Bucs have a good defense and should be able to pressure up front, but Vita Vea is out for the season. He suffered a season-ending injury last week against the Bears. And so, we'll see what kind of defensive output we see from the Buccaneers. But, yeah, I just think they have a better offense. And Brady didn't look too good last week on offense for the Buccaneers. So I think right now the Packers have the better offense. In terms of more momentum, I also think the Packers have the more momentum going into this game. Obviously, as you talked about, the Bucs lost against the Bears last week. It was Brady's worst performance of the year. I think that kind of stemmed their momentum. So the Packers being 3-0, I believe, 3-0, going into this game, I think they have more momentum. They've looked pretty perfect so far, and yeah, they've got momentum. They've got more momentum going in than the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I agree with you on both of those. So for me, I've got better defense. I think this one's pretty simple. I go Tampa Bay. I think they're one of the best defenses in the league. Their pass defense on paper is average, but I really think their secondary is underrated. Antoine Winfield, very, very surprising rookie in terms of his explosiveness and his performance. So happy with their defense there. Their rush defense, as I said before, best run defense in the league. They're holding their opponents to 58.4 rushing yards per game. That is insane. And I definitely think the Packers are going to struggle with Aaron Jones trying to get more yards, from that. I do think that the Packers defense, it's good, but on paper, I mean, Jair Alexander is definitely a great corner, but without Kenny Clark, I just think that they're just missing something, and they haven't played the best teams, and I definitely think the Bucs have played more formidable teams and more formidable offenses, and they've dealt with them in a much better way. regarding the coaching, I've gone with the Packers here. And the reason for that is I do think Arians is a great head coach. I really do. Um, but the problem is I don't think he and Brady are quite on the same page yet. They haven't clicked so far. I think Brady's just taking a bit more time to adjust to Arians' scheme. And it definitely shows in how he's playing right now. I think just a few miscommunications, a few errors. Compare that to how Aaron Rodgers has been playing this year under the second year of Matt LaFleur. I definitely think that Packers right now, their coaching is really good. They're all on the same page. Their offense is just so free flowing. I don't know, it's so seamless. It's really nice to watch. And I definitely think the Packers this year are such a threat because of the coaching and Matt LaFleur's ability to kind of improve. I'd say he's improved the team compared to last season, despite the really bad offseason. So, yeah, coaching goes to the Packers. Pretty easy choice, I'd say.
Agreed. Prediction?
All right, so Bucks winning it. I've got I think it'll be relatively high scoring. I think Bucks win 35-30.
Yeah, I think the Bucks win as well. I think it'll be something like 27-20, something like that. I think the Bucks will be able to kind of stem that Packers offense somewhat and get the win. That is TDU's Game of the Week for Week 6. And on to our last segment this week, and it is Jack's Real Overreaction. And I believe you've got some statements for me.
Absolutely. So I've got 6 for you right here. Starting with, the Panthers have a legitimate chance of winning the NFC South.
That's interesting. And right now, I'm going to go with Real. Based on their recent play, I've got to go with Real. Like, they won 3 wins in a row. The Saints and Buccaneers have had their own, struggles and setbacks, and they're equal first in division. I don't see why they can't challenge for the title right now based on their play, and they're only going to get better once McCaffrey comes back. Obviously, defense is going to be the issue for them. That is kind of their weak link, if there is one so far. But if they're able to compensate for it on offense, then I don't see why they can't make a run for the title.
Yeah, who would have thought we'd be saying this, 5 weeks into the season?
Exactly.
All right, second one for you is the Miami Dolphins are one of the most underrated teams in the league.
That's Real. I mean, they're underrated, but again, even though they won big, I don't think we should overreact to just that one win. They've looked decent. They're underrated for a reason. I wouldn't say they're like a really good team just yet. They're underrated. I think that's Real. I think we're just going to see, how long they're able to sustain this kind of decent play for.
Awesome. Next statement. The AFC West is more open than we thought.
I think that's an overreaction. I'm going to overreaction there. I wouldn't call it open. I mean, it's kind of a 2-horse race, really. The Broncos, the Broncos, it's not going to happen for them. Even when Drew Lock comes back. The Chargers, I feel like they had to win against the Saints to have a chance, and going to 1-4 is going to be tough for them. The Raiders, I don't know. I just can't see anyone topping the Chiefs, not this season. The Raiders are still relatively inexperienced. Playoffs, wild card potentially, but AFC West title, don't think so.
Yeah, it's interesting to note how unlucky the Chargers have been when you consider their really close game against the Chiefs, the Bucs, and now the Saints. If they had won all 3 of those games, they'd be one of the best teams in the AFC right now. And it's just it's really unfortunate because they've been so close, and a lot of time it really hasn't been Justin Herbert's fault. I think he's done really well with the rookie, but it's really just those other factors that really haven't been able to pull ahead and keep the lead in those. Because I believe they were leading in all 3 of those games. I think they had the lead over the Chiefs, they had the big lead over the Bucs, and the big lead over the Saints. They haven't been able to keep it, and that's honestly been their biggest problem. It's kind of like the Falcons, but yeah, it's just unfortunate knowing in an alternate universe what could be right now.
Yeah, it's a shame because the 1-4 record does kind of downplay the really, really impressive play we've seen with Justin Herbert. I feel like he's right now a really strong candidate for Rookie of the Year. If they win those games, then I think we're all talking about Herbert so much more than we are if they're not 1-4. So it's a bit of a shame, but it shouldn't discount what's been a really, really good rookie campaign for Herbert so far, and hopefully he can continue.
Yep. Speaking of Justin Herbert, next statement. Justin Herbert is the best rookie quarterback this season.
Yeah, that's absolutely real. Burrow has had, a few issues with his offensive line and, facing really good defenses. Obviously he came up against the Ravens this week and, it was obliterated. The whole offense was obliterated. They had nothing going all day. They were lucky to even get a score on the board in the end. The play from Herbert has been better. It's as simple as that. Obviously, no one would have picked that at the start of the year. Everyone was downplaying Herbert, saying, bust this, bust that. But he's been the best quarterback so far, and it's been without a doubt as well. So, yeah, that's a real.
Awesome. All right, second last statement. The Vikings are now out of playoff contention.
This is interesting. I'm going to go with the real right now. Like we mentioned, and there was a stat I saw. They are one of the best 1-4 teams DVOA in history. And so, like we talked about the Chargers, in an alternate universe, they could be 2-2. Something like that. Like it's. I'm not going to rule them out of the playoffs just yet, but to say that it's hard because they haven't played that poorly apart from week 1, really. And so, and week 2, sorry. But yeah, it's a really slim chance of, pushing for the playoffs, but I'm not going to rule it out just yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of it relies on how they play against their division rivals. I mean, they've only had one division game so far. So it'll be interesting to see how they play against, Lions, Bears, and Packers, all of which will be crucial because the Bears and Packers right now, they're obviously the front runners in the NFC North. But if the Vikings can get those wins against them, at least one, in their first encounters, then they could definitely creep back into the playoff race.
Yeah, it's going to be all about that conference record, stuff like that, if they're going to try and get into that last wildcard spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, Jack, the last statement for you. The Titans are the third best team in the AFC behind the Chiefs and Ravens.
I'm going to go with Overreaction here. I still think the Steelers are better than them. Today was a really encouraging performance from them. They were really good on both sides of the ball. But I think you also have to acknowledge the play of the Steelers. I think they've been just as good and a little bit better than them. I think their defense is better. And you've got a more experienced, more seasoned quarterback in Roethlisberger. And that's none of this is to downplay the play of the Titans. I just think the Steelers are ever so slightly better.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't get that game in week 4 where we would have had a winner. We would have been able to say which one's better. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the Steelers just get a little bit just a little bit better than Titans right now. But looking forward to their game in week 7. That's going to be a good one.
Exactly. We'll find out pretty soon which of those two teams is better. But either way, both of those teams are definitely among the best in the AFC so far.
Absolutely.
That wraps up episode 21 of the TouchDownUnder podcast. Just me and you, Emilien. It's been good. We hope you guys enjoyed it as well. If you haven't already, make sure to follow us on Instagram. That is at TouchDownUnder. We post all of our podcast and non-podcast content there. Go check it out. We're also on Twitter at the TDU Podcast. We post our podcasts on YouTube at TouchDownUnder. So go and watch us there as well to see our beautiful faces. We look forward to seeing you guys again next week, hopefully with some of the boys back. Thanks for listening. See you later.